In question 4, they give us a name and they want us to draw the molecule. So when you look at a name, you want to look at the 3 parts that make it up. First is the prefix. That tells us how many carbons we have. The prefix meth tells us we have 1 carbon. So that's just going to be a C. Then the infix. The infix AN tells us we have all single bonds. Now I know carbon makes 4 bonds, so that's going to be 4 single bonds. Last but not least, the suffix E tells us that we only have hydrogen and carbon. So at the other ends of those bonds, I can't put carbon, because that would give me more carbons, and I know I only have 1, so I have to put hydrogen, because this molecule is a hydrocarbon and is only made up of hydrogen and carbon. And that is methane. All right, ethane. Look at the prefix F. F tells you that you have 2 carbons. So you'd have 1 and 2 carbons. Then look at the infix, AN. That means you have all single bonds. Now carbon needs 4 bonds, so I'm going to draw 4 bonds around each of these, and they're all going to be single because the infix is AN. Last but not least, the suffix E tells me that the only atoms I have here are hydrogen and carbon. So at the other end of those bonds, you have to have hydrogens. This is the Lewis dot structure. You could also draw this just by using the skeletal structure, and in this case it would be a single line. Carbon is on each end, and the hydrogens are invisible. They're expecting you to see them with your X-ray chemistry vision. So, these are both drawings of ethane. Pentane. First, look at the prefix. That tells you how many carbons you have. The prefix pent stands for 5 carbons. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The infix AN tells you that we have all single bonds for all of those carbons. So each carbon is going to get 4 single bonds. Last but not least, the suffix E is telling us that we have a hydrocarbon. So at the other end of those bonds, it's just going to be hydrogen. That's the only other element that we could use here. So that's the Lewis dot structure. You could also draw this as a skeletal structure, and this would be zigzag. So first draw a dot, that stands for the first carbon, and then 1, 2, that's our second carbon, 3, third carbon, 4, and 5. So that would be the skeletal structure. So these are both pentane. Cyclopropane. All right, let's ignore that cyclo for just a second. Let's look at the prefix like we usually do. Prop stands for 3 carbons. So I'm going to draw 3 carbons. Now, how I arrange these carbons does involve that cyclo. Remember that cyclo means things are going in a ring. So I'm going to put the 3 carbons in a ring. And a 3-carbon ring would look kind of like a triangle. So you could have each carbon at the vertex, the point of a triangle. Next, the infix AN tells us we have all single bonds between, or only single bonds in this molecule. So all those carbons have single bonds. Remember, each carbon needs 4 bonds total. So far, each of the carbons only has 2, so we have to add 2 more to each of these. Last but not least, the suffix is telling us we only have hydrogen and carbon. The suffix AN, is all single bonds. The infix AN is all single bonds. The suffix E tells us we only have hydrogen and carbon, so at the other end of those bonds, we just have hydrogens. This is the Lewis dot structure. You could also draw a skeletal structure where a carbon is represented by a point and the hydrogens are implied. So those are both cyclopropane.